If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. But that was before Aspen. Before the storm. Before that cabin in the middle of nowhere. My name is Lucas. I am 24, and I live in a small apartment on the edge of Denver, Colorado. The kind of place where you can always hear the city in the distance, but it is far enough away that the nights feel quiet and empty. I work as a freelance coder, mostly building websites for coffee shops, yoga studios, small local businesses that want a clean page and an online menu. It is not a dream job, but it lets me work from my couch in sweatpants. I wake up, make coffee, stare at my laptop, write code, fix bugs. Some days, if I feel brave, I go for a run on the trails outside town. I am not big on crowds. Not big on chaos. That has always been my thing. Stay calm. Stay inside. Keep people at a safe distance. I had a girlfriend once in college. We lasted 6 months. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. She told me I was too closed off, that it felt like she was dating a locked door. She was not wrong. I have walls, and for the most part, I have been fine living behind them. My best friend Jake is the complete opposite. He is also 24, a sales guy with a big smile and big energy. He talks his way into everything. Free drinks, VIP lists, strangers' lives. He drags me into bar crawls, road trips, pickup basketball games, things I would never start on my own. Last week he called me, voice buzzing like he had coffee hooked straight into his veins. "Lucas, you have to come with me to Aspen," he said. "Ski trip. Couple days. My treat." I groaned into the phone. Skiing is not my thing. I am not a throw yourself down a mountain kind of guy. I am more of a stay inside and avoid breaking bones kind of guy. But Jake kept pushing. "Come on, man. My mom's coming too. She needs a break. It'll be fun, like a family vibe." If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. It was hard to say no when he said it like that. Like if I refused, I was turning my back on something important. So I packed a bag, dragged out some old thermals from high school, and said, "Fine, I'll go." Jake's mom, Elena, is 44. I have known her since I was 15, when Jake and I first became friends. She is not the warm cookie baking type. She has this quiet intensity, like she has seen a lot and carries it around in her spine. I remember her old beat-up Jeep at the school pickup line. There was always a book or a camera on the passenger seat. Jake once told me she used to be a war photographer. Now she edits articles for an online magazine. She has long brown hair she usually ties back and deep green eyes that seem to notice everything. I always thought she was beautiful, but in that way that felt off limits, far away. She was Jake's mom. That was the box I kept her in. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. When we got to Aspen that Friday afternoon, it felt like walking into a postcard. Snow on the tall pines, cabins with smoke curling from stone chimneys, air so cold and clean it stung your lungs. Jake had booked us into a lodge near the slopes. It had wood beams, plaid blankets, and the smell of pine and hot cocoa everywhere. His crew was already there. 3 other guys and a girl, all loud and ready to attack the mountain with snowboards and too much energy. I felt out of place right away, like some extra piece that did not fit in the puzzle. Jake tossed a football in the living room for no reason, music played from someone's speaker, and empty beer bottles started to gather on the table. Selena sat by a big window in the lodge, a red scarf draped over her chair, steam rising from the metal thermos in her hands. She watched the snow fall outside while everyone else buzzed around. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. When Jake called her over to join them, she smiled but stayed where she was. At one point, our eyes met across the room. She gave me a small nod, like she could see I was not really there for the party either. It felt like a little secret understanding between us. By the second morning, I was tired. Jake and his friends had stayed up late laughing and blasting music. I had barely slept. They were planning to go snowboarding through some amazing backcountry trails in a pine forest a few miles from the lodge. "You coming, Lucas?" Jake asked, zipping up his bright jacket. I shook my head. "Nah, I think I'll stay here. Someone has to keep the couch company." He shrugged, already halfway out the door with his board and his crew. I grabbed a coffee from the lodge kitchen and sat on a couch near the fireplace, scrolling through my phone, planning to waste the morning in peace. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. That is when Elena walked over, her boots making a soft crunch on the old wood floor. "Not joining them?" she asked. Her voice was low, smooth, not unfriendly. I looked up, surprised she had come to talk to me. "Not really my scene," I said. "You?" She gave a faint smile and adjusted her red scarf. "I would rather walk than fall down a mountain." The way she said it made me laugh. "Want to take a walk then?" I asked, almost before I could stop myself. "There are trails around here, nothing crazy." She tilted her head, thinking. Then she nodded. "Sure." Let me grab my thermos. We headed out on a marked trail near the lodge, just a simple loop through the snow-covered trees, nothing wild. The sky was clear at first, and the sun bounced off the snow so bright it made my eyes water. Our boots crunched on the packed path, our breath coming out in small clouds. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. Elena walked beside me, her red scarf bright against her dark coat. Steam rose from her thermos every time she took a sip. We talked a little. She asked about my coding jobs. I asked about her editing. She did not talk about war zones or heavy things. Just simple stuff. It was easy. "You come up here a lot with Jake?" I asked, stepping over a twisted root poking through the snow. She nodded, her eyes scanning the trees. "Every year since he was a kid," she said. "It's our thing." Her voice softened like there was more to the story, but she did not add anything. I did not press. Then the air started to change. A thin gray cloud slid over the sky. The light dimmed, and a soft flurry of snowflakes began to fall. I zipped my jacket up higher, thinking it was nothing, just a passing cloud. But the snow got thicker, heavier. The trees blurred at the edges. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. The trail markers, little wooden posts with red paint, started to fade into the white. "We should head back," I said, my gut tightening a little. Elena looked around and nodded. Agreed. We turned to follow the way we had come, but the path behind us was gone, buried under fresh snow. Everything looked the same, white ground, dark tree trunks. No clear line ahead. I pulled out my phone and checked it. 10% battery. No signal. "Shit," I muttered under my breath, turning on the small flashlight anyway. Elena's face stayed calm, but her hands were deep in her pockets now, her breath coming in short, visible puffs. "We'll find it," she said, but her voice had a tight edge I had never heard before. The snow kept coming, faster now, swallowing shapes, turning the whole forest into a white wall around us. That was when it hit me. We were not just on a walk anymore. We were lost. In a snowstorm. Alone. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. Just me and my best friend's mom. The snow did not stop. It came harder, thicker, like someone had turned the whole sky into a white curtain. The trees around us turned into gray shapes with no edges. My phone's flashlight cut a small cone of light in front of us, but it felt useless, like trying to push back the ocean with a spoon. I kept walking faster without thinking, hoping we would just stumble back onto the trail. My boots sank deeper into the snow with every step. My toes were starting to go numb. My lungs burned from the cold air. Behind me, Elena's boots crunched slower. "Lucas, slow down," she called, her voice sharp over the wind. I stopped and turned. She was a few steps back. Her red scarf now dusted white, her hood pulled low. Her face was pale, her green eyes steady but tight at the corners. "We're just going in circles," she said. I looked around. She was right. Every direction looked the same. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. White ground, dark trunks, no clear path. I checked my phone again. 6% battery, no signal, just a glowing screen that made me feel more stupid than safe. I stuffed it back in my pocket and tried to keep my voice even. "I'm sorry," I said. "I shouldn't have suggested this walk." I waited for her to snap at me, to tell me I had dragged her into this mess. Instead, she just shook her head and brushed snow off her sleeve. "It's not your fault, Lucas," she said. "Storms like this come out of nowhere up here." Her tone was calm, but I could see her lips were starting to lose color. Her hands were buried deep in her coat pockets. She was colder than she was letting on. We started moving again, but now every step felt heavy, like the mountain was pushing back. The wind picked up, throwing fine snow into our faces. My jeans were wet at the ankles. My fingers ached inside my gloves. "You okay?" If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. I asked, slowing down to match her pace. She nodded, but her breath was uneven, and she winced when she stepped over a hidden root. "Just keep going," she said. But her voice had a small tremor I had never heard before. Time stretched in that white noise. It felt like we had been walking for hours, though it was probably closer to one. Finally, I stopped again, chest heaving, legs burning. "This isn't working," I said, more to myself than to her. "We're not finding anything." My brain started spinning. I saw us stuck out here all night. I pictured stories I had read about people freezing to death a mile from safety. Panic clawed at my chest. Elena stepped closer and put her gloved hand on my shoulder. Her touch was light but firm. "Lucas, stop," she said. Her voice cut clean through my thoughts. "You're panicking and it's making me panic. We need to think." I looked at her properly. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. Snow had escaped her hood and was caught in her brown hair, melting into dark strands across her forehead. Her cheeks were red from the cold. Her eyes were wide, focused, like she was looking through the storm, not just at it. She looked like someone who had seen worse than this. Like those war stories Jake told me about. But her hand was shaking a little on my shoulder. She was not made of stone. "Okay," I said, forcing myself to breathe slower. "What do we do?" She scanned the trees, her breath coming out in quick white bursts. "We need shelter," she said. "If we keep wandering, we'll just get more lost. We have to get out of the wind and stay warm." The words "stay warm" hit different now. "Shelter where?" I asked. "We're in the middle of nowhere." "Downhill," she said. "There's usually something. A ranger station, a shed, an old cabin. People build things out here." If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. If we head down, we have a better chance of finding something than chasing a trail we can't see. I wanted to argue, but she was right. I was letting fear steer us. "Okay," I said. This time I reached for her without thinking and took her gloved hand. "Downhill." Her fingers tightened around mine. She did not let go right away. That small grip made the cold feel a little less sharp. We started moving downhill, step by step. The snow was deeper, grabbing at our legs. The wind bit at my face. At one point we argued, tired and tense. I said we should backtrack. She said there was nothing to backtrack to. "Lucas, we're not finding that trail in this," she said firmly. "We need to stay alive first. We can't do that if we freeze out here trying to be right." I shut my mouth. She was not being harsh. She was just being real. My phone finally died, the screen going black. For a second, I felt even more alone. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. Then I felt her hand still in mine, solid and warm, and I kept going. The light around us started to fade. Day was sliding into early evening, and the snowstorm was turning the forest darker. Just when my legs felt like they could not take one more step, Elena pointed ahead. "There," she said, her voice breaking with a note of relief. Through the white blur I saw it, a low shape, dark against the snow. A small structure tucked against a group of pines. We pushed toward it, fighting the drifts. It was a cabin, or something close to one. Just 4 walls of old gray wood and a slanted roof, half buried under snow. I shoved my shoulder against the door. It groaned, then gave way with a jerk, sending a shower of snow down onto my boots. Inside it was dark, still, and freezing, but it was shelter, dry air, a barrier between us and the storm. I stepped in, my feet scraping the rough floor. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. Elena followed, pulling the door closed behind us. "This will do," she said softly. Her voice was tired now. She was shivering. I pulled my dead phone out one last time and used the last faint glow to scan the room. There was a small, rusty wood stove in one corner, a bench along the wall, a crate with folded wool blankets, and a dusty shelf with a few old cans. Next to the stove sat a small pile of kindling and a box of matches. "Okay," I said, letting out a breath I did not know I was holding. "We can work with this." I knelt by the stove and fumbled with the matches. My fingers felt thick and clumsy from the cold. It took a few tries, the first couple of matches snapping or going out too fast. Finally, one caught. The flame licked at the dry wood, then spread. Soon a small fire was burning in the stove, orange light spilling into the cabin. The warmth felt almost unreal at first. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. Then my face started to sting as the feeling came back. I glanced over at Elena. She was sitting on the bench, pulling off her wet gloves. Her hair was damp, sticking to her cheeks. Her lips were pale, but she managed a small smile. "Not bad, Lucas," she said quietly. "You're handy in a crisis." I laughed once, my voice rough. "Yeah, don't let Jake hear you say that. He'll never shut up about it." I grabbed 2 blankets from the crate and shook the dust off them. I handed one to her. She wrapped it around her shoulders, and I did the same with mine. Then I sat down next to her on the bench, close enough to feel the heat from her body in the fire. On the shelf, I found a can of beef stew and 2 rusty spoons. I opened it carefully and held it near the stove to warm the contents a little. "Dinner?" I said. Her eyebrow lifted slightly, but she smiled. "Look at that. 5-star dining." If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. We shared the can, passing it back and forth. It tasted like salt and metal and something that wanted to be meat, but it warmed my stomach and made the cabin feel less like a trap. She poured the last of the coffee from her thermos into the lid, and we passed that too, taking turns. As the fire grew steady, the cabin filled with a soft orange light. The wind still howled outside, but inside things were quieter. Elena leaned back against the wall, blanket pulled tight around her. For a while, we just listened to the fire. "Jake and I used to come up here every winter," she said finally, her voice low, "after his dad died." I turned my head toward her. "In Afghanistan," she added. Jake was 15. Coming up to the snow was our way of pretending everything was still normal. Like if we kept this one thing the same, the rest of it would hurt less. She stared into the flames. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. Her fingers traced the edge of her empty thermos. "I did not realize how much I was pretending too," she said. I swallowed. I had never heard that story from her. I had heard Jake mention his dad, but never like this. Never with this weight. I didn't know, I said quietly, about all that. Most people don't, she replied. I don't talk about it. It is easier to keep moving. Her shoulders were tense under the blanket. Her jaw was tight. On impulse, I reached out and put my hand over hers, where it rested on the thermos. Her skin was cold, even through her thin glove. You don't have to keep moving right now, I said. We're not going anywhere until this storm calms down. She did not pull away. Instead, her fingers curled slightly under mine, holding on. She let out a slow breath that sounded like she had been holding it for years. Thank you, Lucas, she said, almost a whisper, for being here. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. Something in my chest shifted. I shrugged off my jacket. It was still damp, but warm from my body, and gently laid it over her shoulders on top of the blanket. She looked at me, surprised. You're going to freeze, she said. I'll manage, I replied. You're colder than I am. She gave me a small smile, soft and a little sad. You're a good man, she said. Jake chose his friends well. The fire crackled. The wind screamed. Our knees were touching under the blanket now. Her hand was still under mine, sitting there in that tiny cabin, with the storm pressing against the walls and her eyes shining in the firelight. I realized something that made my heartbeat quicken. This was not just about staying alive, and it was not just about staying warm anymore. The fire kept growing, throwing a warm orange glow around the cabin. Shadows flickered on the rough wood walls. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. Outside, the wind slammed against the boards like it wanted in, but the tiny stove pushed back, inch by inch. Elena's hand was still under mine. I could feel the slight tremble in her fingers slowly fade as the heat reached us. Our shoulders brushed under the blanket. Every small touch felt louder than the storm. You okay? I asked, my voice low. She stared at the flames for a moment like she was watching memories move inside them. I do not know, she said honestly. I do not ask myself that question very often. She shifted, and the blanket slipped a little from her shoulder. I reached up to pull it back into place. My fingers brushed her neck, warm now, not icy like before. She did not flinch. She leaned into my hand the smallest bit, and my heart pulled tight in my chest. When I was a photographer, she said, eyes still on the fire, I saw things I cannot forget. Cities in ruins. Families in pieces. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. People who had lost everything except the clothes on their back. I learned to keep moving, to keep working. If I stopped, even for a second, I was afraid it would all crush me. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the strain under it. When Jake's dad died, she continued, I did the same thing. I stayed busy for him, for us. I drove him to practice, took him camping, brought him up to the snow. I thought if I kept going, we would not fall apart. She paused and let out a long breath. Somewhere in all that, I forgot how to just be a person, not a mother, not a worker, not the strong one, just me. I swallowed, feeling her words sink into the space between us. I get that, I said, in a different way. She turned her head to look at me. Her green eyes were sharp but soft, waiting. I hide in my work, I said. In code, in screens. It is easier to fix problems in a console than talk to real people. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. Easier to be the quiet guy in the corner than risk saying something that matters. I laughed weakly. Then I wake up one day and I am 24 and my life is just a loop of coffee and pixels. Her lips tilted in a sad smile. What are you really afraid of, Lucas? She asked. I thought about it. Running from it would have been easier, but somehow that felt wrong here. Failing, I said. Getting close to someone, and having them look at me and say I am not enough, or that I am too much of something I do not know how to change. Her eyes softened in a way that made my chest ache. "Whoever said that last part was wrong," she said, "but I understand." She shifted closer. Our thighs were touching now under the blanket. I could feel her warmth through damp layers of fabric. "Do you ever feel lonely?" I asked, before I could stop myself. She let out a small, humorless laugh. "All the time," she admitted. "If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, 'We'll have to keep each other warm,' I would have laughed in your face. People think being strong means you do not need anyone. The truth is, you need people even more. You just get better at hiding it." Her hand turned under mine until our fingers slid together. She laced them with mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Lucas," she said slowly, "if this storm goes bad, if tonight is all we get, I do not want to spend it pretending. Not here, not with you." Something in me cracked open at those words. "Then do not pretend," I said. "Not with me." I did not know who moved first. Maybe it was her. Maybe it was me. All I know is that 1 second we were looking at each other, and the next we were closer, breaths mixing in the small space between us. Her eyes searched mine one last time, asking a question she did not say out loud. I answered without words, leaning in that last inch. Our lips met. It was not wild or rushed. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. It was slow and careful, like we were both afraid to break something fragile. Her mouth was warm, tasting faintly of coffee and smoke. The kiss deepened a little, not trying to be more than it was. Just two people saying, "I see you," in the only language that made sense in that moment. My hand slid up to her jaw, my thumb brushing her cheek. She rested her free hand on my chest, fingers curling into my shirt, like she was holding on to something solid. When we finally pulled back, our foreheads stayed together. We breathed in the same small pocket of air. "I have not felt this alive in a long time," she whispered. "Me neither," I said. And it was true. We sat like that for a while, not talking. The fire snapped softly. The wind roared and then faded and then rose again. Inside, everything felt steady. She shifted again, settling her body against mine, her head resting on my shoulder. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. I wrapped my arm around her, pulling the blanket tighter over both of us. She let out a small sound, half sigh, half release, and relaxed fully into me. "The thing about cold," she murmured, her voice almost lost in the crackle of the fire, "is that if you are alone, it eats you faster." She turned her face slightly, her lips brushing my neck as she spoke the next words. "We will have to keep each other warm tonight." The sentence should have sounded like a line from a movie, something cheesy. But in that cabin, with the storm outside and the fire casting light over her face, it felt like a promise and a confession at the same time. I tightened my arm around her. "Then stay close," I said. "We are not letting the cold win." We did not take off more layers than we needed to. We did not turn the moment into something else. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. We just held on to each other, bodies pressed together under the blankets, sharing heat and breath. Her heart beat steady against my chest. Mine finally started to slow down. Every so often, she would talk softly, half awake. She told me about a photo she had taken once of a soldier holding a letter from home by candlelight. How it was the only time she had cried on assignment, not because it was violent, but because it was so human. I told her about a website I had built for a bakery. How they sent me a message later saying my design helped them get more customers. How stupid it felt to be proud of that compared to her stories, and yet how real that pride had felt. "Nothing you care about is stupid," she said firmly. "Do not let anyone tell you it is small just because it is quiet." Her words sank into me deeper than the cold ever could. At some point, words faded. and our breathing fell into the same slow rhythm. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. My neck ached from the angle. My back complained about the hard bench. None of it mattered. I do not know when I drifted off, but I remember the last things I felt. The weight of her head on my chest. The dull roar of the wind. The steady warmth of her body against mine. For the first time in a very long time, I fell asleep feeling like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, even if that place was a half-broken cabin in the middle of a snowstorm with my best friend's mom in my arms. I woke up to a strange sound. For a second I thought it was my heartbeat, loud in my ears. Then I realized it was coming from outside. A low, steady thump that did not belong to the wind or the trees. My eyes opened slow. The fire in the stove had burned down to red embers. The cabin was colder now. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. Lena was still pressed against me under the blankets, her head on my chest, her hand resting over my shirt like she had fallen asleep holding on. The sound grew louder, a chop, chop, chop that shook the air. "A helicopter," I said, my voice rough. Elena stirred, blinking, her eyes trying to focus in the dim light. She pushed herself up on one elbow, listening. The faint thump turned into a steady roar. Then we heard it. Voices. Faint at first, then clearer. Shouts carried by the wind. "They found us," she said quietly. Those words should have made me relax. Instead, I felt something pull tight inside my chest. This little world we had inside four old walls and a dying fire was about to end. We sat up, pulling the blankets free, moving stiff limbs that did not want to move. My muscles ached from the cold and from sleeping half upright. Elena's hair was messy, her face soft with sleep. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. For a moment we just looked at each other. "Guess we should go," I said. "Yeah," she whispered. We stood and got our coats back on, wrapped the blankets around us one more time, then opened the door. Cold air hit us like a slap. The storm had calmed. Snow still fell, but lighter now. The sky was a flat gray. In the distance, through the trees, I saw flashing lights and the shape of a helicopter settling in a small clearing. Figures were moving toward us, bright jackets against the white. We stepped out into the snow. It crunched under our boots, fresh and deep. Elena walked beside me, her red scarf bright again against her dark coat. Her shoulder brushed mine. For 1 second, her gloved hand reached for mine and squeezed it, quick and strong, before letting go as the rescuers got close. "Over here!" a ranger shouted, waving an arm. As they reached us, I saw Jake behind them. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. His face was pale and scared in a way I had never seen. He started running. "Mom!" he yelled. He reached Elena and wrapped both arms around her, almost knocking her back. She held him tight, her face pressed into his shoulder, her hand cradling the back of his neck like he was still 15. "I'm okay," she said into his jacket. "I'm okay." He turned to me next, eyes red and wet. "Dude," he said, grabbing my shoulder, "I thought you were both dead out here." I tried to smile, my throat tight. "We're fine," I said. "Found a cabin. Got a fire going." One of the rangers clapped me on the back. "Smart," he said. "You saved yourselves a lot of trouble." I wanted to look at Elena, to share one more glance that said more than words, but she was answering questions now. How long we were out, which trail we had taken, how we found the cabin. "We stayed close and kept moving until we saw it," she said. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. Lucas kept his head. We were lucky. Jake shot me a grin full of relief. "You're a hero, man," he said. "Hero." I did not feel like one. I just felt different, changed. They loaded us into the helicopter. Inside, it was loud and cramped. They wrapped us in silver thermal blankets that crackled every time we moved. Elena sat across from me, her scarf tucked neatly under her chin now, her face calm again. Our eyes met once in the middle of all that noise. For just a second, no one else would have noticed anything. But I saw it. That flicker of something only we knew. What had happened in the dark while the storm screamed. Back at the lodge, everything was a blur. Staff, medics, questions. Hot drinks pressed into our hands. Jake's friends crowding around, talking too loud. "You guys are insane," one of them said. "I would have frozen solid." "We're okay," Elena kept saying, her voice steady. "Really, we're okay. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, 'We'll have to keep each other warm,' I would have laughed in your face." She was back in her role now, Jake's mom. Calm, collected, strong. I watched her from across the room. Every now and then I thought she might look over at me. Sometimes she did, just for a heartbeat. Then she turned back to whoever was talking to her. That night I lay in my lodge bed, staring at the wooden beams overhead. I could still feel her weight against my chest. Still hear her whisper, "We'll have to keep each other warm." In the morning we packed up. The trip was over. Everyone was tired and quiet. On the drive back to Denver, Jake talked most of the way. About the storm, about how crazy it was, about how he was going to tell the story forever. Elena sat in the front seat, her thermos in her lap, answering him in soft, simple lines. I sat in the back, watching the snow-covered mountains slide away behind us, feeling like I had left something there that I would never get back and never forget. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. Back in the city, life moved on fast. Jake went back to work, back to planning his next big thing. I went back to my apartment, back to my laptop and my quiet routines. Only it did not feel the same. I kept replaying that night. The fire, her voice, her hand in mine. The way we talked about things that actually mattered. The way she had looked at me when she said she wanted to be seen as a woman, not just a mother or someone strong. A few days later, I texted her. Just 3 words. "You okay?" No reply. I told myself she was busy, that she had a lot to process. A week later, I tried again. "Coffee sometime?" Still nothing. The silence hurt more than I wanted to admit. Maybe this was what it meant. Maybe the cabin was a moment outside of time. And now we were back in real life, where lines and roles and logic ruled again. About a month later, Jake invited me over to watch a game. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. I went, telling myself it was just for the football, not because I hoped to see her. He opened the door and waved me in, already yelling about some player on TV. I stepped into the living room and froze. On the wall, in a new frame, was a photograph. Snow-covered trees. A forest. Heavy branches bowed with white. And on one bare branch, hanging like a small bright flag, was a red scarf. Her red scarf. My heart slammed once hard against my ribs. "New picture?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Jake glanced over at it. "Yeah," he said. "Mom printed that one last week. She took it on the trip. Thought it looked cool." He turned back to the TV. "She's out right now, running errands. You want a beer?" I nodded, but my mind was still on the photo. The forest. The scarf. The way she had chosen that moment to capture and hang on the wall. Not of us. Not of the cabin. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. But of something that only she and I would really understand. I watched the game, or pretended to. When I left, Jake called after me. "You good, man? You've been kind of off since Aspen." "Yeah," I said, "just tired." On the drive home, the city lights blurred past my windshield. I thought about texting her again, about asking what the photo meant. I did not. A couple weeks later, I came home from a run one evening. My lungs burned. My legs felt heavy. There was a small package on my doormat. Plain brown paper. No return address. My heart jumped before my brain caught up. Inside my apartment, I set it on the table and peeled the paper back slowly. Inside was a red scarf. Her red scarf. Folded neat. Clean. Soft in my hands. It still held a faint smell of pine and coffee and something that made my chest hurt. Tucked between the folds was a small piece of paper. Her handwriting was simple and clear. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. Not the last night, but not the first either. I know I can knock if I need to. That was it. No name, no hello, no promise. I stood there in my kitchen, scarf in my hands, note between my fingers, and I felt that cabin all over again. The fire. Her voice. The way she had rested against me like she finally put something down. It was not an invitation to pick up where we left off. It was not a plan for some secret future. It was something quieter, a reminder, a door left slightly open, a way of saying, what happened mattered. You mattered. I have not forgotten. I put the scarf on a shelf in my room next to the books I kept meaning to read, not hidden, but not on display for everyone either. It was mine and hers. Life kept going. I kept coding. Jake kept talking about moving to another city. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. Elena went back to being the woman who waved when I dropped by, who smiled in a calm, polite way, who talked about work and weather and Jake's plans. We have not talked about the cabin, not with words. But sometimes, when I see her across a room, our eyes meet for a second. In that small look, I feel everything again. The storm. The heat. The honesty. I do not know if she will ever knock. I do not know if I would be ready if she did. Maybe that night was what it needed to be. Not a love story that lasts forever. A moment that woke us both up. She taught me something in that little cabin. That being seen is worth the risk. That quiet is not the same as empty. That I do not have to keep everyone at a distance just to stay safe. Now, when I sit in my apartment and open my laptop, I feel different. I still write code. I still drink too much coffee. But I also pick up a pencil sometimes and sketch. I answer texts. If you had told me I would be stuck in a snowstorm with my best friend's mom and hear her say, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I would have laughed in your face. I say yes when someone asks to hang out. I try. When it snows in Denver, I stand at my window for a minute and watch it fall. The cold on the glass feels less sharp now. Because I know somewhere out there is a woman with green eyes and a camera who once sat beside me in a storm and said we would have to keep each other warm. And even if that night was only ours for a little while, it left a fire in me that has not gone out.